we first took the different tabulations methods used in 2020, okay? And Rob, if you want to say this, and then we compared it to 2024 to see what's changed, right?
Correct, according to Ballotpedia.
According to Ballotpedia, and then we fed it to ChatGPT. And what did ChatGPT tell us?
It gave us a list of, I believe it was 16 states that have changed the way that they count or tabulate the votes for the 2024 election as opposed to 2020.
So 2020 Alaska went from hand count and optical scan in 2020 to the DRE with VVPAT, now using hand count, optical scan, and DRE, okay? Arizona optical scan, including DREs and VVPAT, they went to that and now only using hand-marked paper ballots and BMDs, okay? Delaware optical scan to BMD tabulator. Hawaii optical scan and DRE to now they removed optical scan only, no more DRE. Idaho hand count, optical scan and DRE to now hand count and optical scan only, remove DRE. Kansas, you see it, they removed hand count and DRE. Kentucky, they are using BMDs only in 2024. Mississippi, they reduced the DREs. Missouri, they reduced DREs. Montana, no major change, about the same. Nevada, no major change, but emphasis on mail ballots. New Hampshire, no major change. And in New Jersey, they went from optical scan to BMD tabulator, optical scan, DRE, accessible interference, expanded use system use, and there's a couple more, 3 more left at the bottom. Ohio went from optical scan DRE to BMD tabulator, optical scan DRE. And in Oklahoma, they added direct recording assistive interference. West Virginia, hand count, optical scan DRE, and now BMD tabulator and optical scan. When you see this, and at the bottom, just to explain what the different things are, additional BMD tabulator systems in states like Delaware, Kansas, and West Virginia, reduction of DRE use, Ohio, Idaho, Mississippi, Missouri, shifting voting system, and hazard. So when you hear this, are you telling yourself, okay, good, they're making progress, or no, they're still doing the same thing?
So first of all, this is DRE. And DRE is the most insecure way of voting. So
most what?
Most insecure.
Insecure way of voting.
So that's why every reduction of DRE is a move to the right direction. My joke was that 2020 election was secured by COVID because when in-person voting went down, it means that less DREs were used, because DRE is the most insecure way.
So you're saying 2020 election was the most accurate one, according to your assessment? So
I'm not agreeing with what Chris was saying when he was running CISA, that this was most secure election. I say it's most secure recent elections, because we don't know how secure elections were 50s and 60s and 70s. There's no way of making that measurement. But since HAVA, that 2020 was most secure election because all of the problems had been flagged, not all of the problems, but the problems had been flagged. And that's why more eyeballs were looking into the election. More scrutinizing was put in place. And that is always good. As I said, transparency is very important, and people wanting to scrutinize the election is the good thing. So when I look, this whole thing is, I like the fact that DRE is going away, because that's a move the right direction. I'm disagreeing that using a ballot marking device is good move, because ballot marking devices is putting another computer between voter and voter's vote. There's a recent study by University of Michigan where voters were presented a voting machine. They were told that they are testing a new method of voting, and that was ballot marking device. And the voters were encouraged and advised to study the ballot. What the voters didn't know is that the machine will cheat every single time. Every ballot printed by the machine was wrong.
Really?
And at the same time, only a tiny fraction of the voters actually caught it, because we humans are very bad in verifying our choices. This was a study where people were told to verify the ballot. So again, I'm against ballot marking devices. I'm advocate for hand-marked paper ballots. And I'm advocating at the same time to use, if a jurisdiction is large, use a ballot optical scans to do the scanning, because when it works, it's accurate. But you cannot trust it. You always have to use risk limiting audit or complete recount if you want to verify that the machine got right, because the human error rate is too high. And again, you have to think about the way elections are carried out.
Rob, check your phone. Go ahead.
The average age of poll workers, the joke is average age of poll workers goes up one every year. So there's always a shortage of poll workers. The whole idea which some activists are promoting, well, let's make smaller precincts and let's bring another set of people to do a hand count after the election night. It doesn't work because you don't have the manpower. You don't have the people who are willing to do it. And if you use same people who have been up 14 hours before you start counting, you have even increased you have the pressure, you have the tiredness, all of that. So hand-marked paper ballots, optical scan, and then mandatory risk-limiting audit. Every race, every ballot, every race, every time, you are doing a mandatory check that the outcome of the election is right. And let me underline one thing. Risk-limiting audit risk-limiting audit starts from an assumption that the result is wrong. It's misrepresented to say it verifies the result. No, it starts from the assumption the result is wrong. And then risk limiting audit is proving that the outcome is correct. So it starts by thinking it's wrong and then it's proving it's right, or it proves that you have to go and recount everything because it doesn't match.
What kind of machines are used in Wisconsin? Do you know?
I don't on top of my head. And remember one thing. There are two kinds of states. There are states where the whole state uses the same machine. Most states don't have that. So you have multiple different kind of machines used across the state. Like Georgia is special in the sense that the whole Georgia is voting with the same machines. Most U.S. it's every county is different. So next county over might have a completely different machine than your county.
Oh my God, do you think that's a good idea?
There is a strong belief in the U.S. that elections are state rights. So every state has a right to do the elections whatever way they want.
I believe that.
So then you have two different kinds.
My question isn't that. My question is that they use different ways to calculate in a same state by different counties. I understand if it's state, but is it better to use one way of counting votes in an entire state?
Well, if you think about different size of jurisdictions, you like in New Hampshire.
Yeah.
New Hampshire has 120 plus voting jurisdictions who don't need voting machines because they are so small. So it would be not good to force them to use voting machines just because the large jurisdictions need to have a voting machine. So what I'm saying is that we need the federally set basic standards, what all voting machines have to meet. And after that, it doesn't matter if the next county over in the same state uses a different machine. But we need to have a unified set of rules. What are the minimum requirements for voting machines to be accepted to be used in the United States?
Yeah, I just when you're counting, it's kind of like accrued versus cash basis. When a company is selling and you're calculating your EBITDA, if the way you calculate valuation is cash basis, let's just say somebody else does accrued, those are two different philosophical ways of calculating something,
correct?
Right? That's why I don't know if it's a good idea to have different methods of counting votes in the same state. I understand you want to do DREs, you want to do BMDs, you want to do paper ballots, but it's the entire state paper ballots, the entire state DRE, the entire state BMD. That gives a little bit more credibility than diversifying it too much.
I think every state and every county in the U.S. should be paper ballots. I don't think the DRE should be accepted. I mean, that's fundamentally the most insecure. We have been using mail-in ballots during Vietnam War, Korean War, World War II, World War I, the Revolutionary War. We know how mail-in ballots work. And in mail-in ballots, you get the paper ballot. You have problems like voter coercion, for example. Somebody can be forced, and that's usually happening in close circles next to you. All of those technologies are way better because you have a paper ballot, which you can go back. Instead of DRE, where you have just electronic records. The same reason is internet voting. We don't have a technology to do internet voting today. We just fundamentally don't have a way to do it. And people who are promoting internet voting use false analogies, for example, claiming that since we can do online banking, why can't we vote on internet? So first of all, election is a unique security problem in the world because of two requirements: secret ballot and auditability. Secret ballot means that even if the voter wants to reveal how he or she voted, shouldn't be able to. Because if you can be proving how you vote, it enables vote buying, vote selling, and vote coercion, election coercion, voter coercion. So that's the one thing. So if we wouldn't have secret ballot, we will have all of these problems coming back. And then we need to have the auditability. Of course, additional aspect is now public trust. And there are promising ways of thinking internet voting, for example, homomorphic encryption. But would you believe if I say that this machine is using the homomorphic encryption correctly? I don't think it's a good idea to use technology which is very small handful of people can even verify that it honestly works right. We need public trust. And paper ballot, unmarked paper ballot is the only way we can bring public trust. Also, people who are promoting internet voting are claiming that it will activate young voters. Estonia is one of the democracies which have been using internet voting longest, and they publish the age brackets. And when you go to Estonia, you see that the young voters are actually going down as a percentage, and the people over 55 is the growing people of internet voting. So the analogy used and the claim used, we need internet voting and mobile phone voting in order to get the younger people.
That's a valid argument. That's a valid argument.
But the evidence doesn't support the argument.
I get what you're saying.